When my real parents found me, I was at home looking after my adoptive dad, Tom, who couldn't move well. I was cleaning him up when a woman in rich clothes named Helen saw me. Tears filled her eyes, and she rushed to hug me, crying, "Lena! Lena!" I coldly pushed her away and looked at my dad, Tom, who was excited on the bed. In a calm voice, I said, "Give me $500,000 and I'll go be your daughter." My name is Lena. My real parents found me while I was washing my sick adoptive dad. They looked rich and didn't fit in our poor home. The woman, Helen, looked very well cared for and started crying as soon as she saw me. She hugged me tight and said sadly, "Lena, Lena, you've suffered so much." She held me close, sobbing loudly. I knew this day would come eventually. Hearing the noise, my adoptive mom, Martha, came from the kitchen. She was shocked to see them. "Sister, what's happening?" she asked, confused. I looked up and saw a girl holding onto my real dad's arm. Her name was Claire. She wore a lovely white dress, had perfect hair, and fancy jewelry. She looked completely different from me. I was poor and plain. My real mom, Helen, kept crying as they explained to Martha that they were my real parents. 15 years ago, two mothers had babies in the same hospital, and the babies got mixed up. When they found out, they started searching for me and rushed over as soon as they heard where I was. Their plan was to take me back to be their daughter. They didn't want Claire to come back here because they had raised her for 15 years and felt close to her. Listening to this, Martha started crying too. Giving birth had hurt her body, and she couldn't have any more children. I was her only child. Our family was very poor, so thinking about my future, she wanted me to go with them. But she couldn't stand losing me. Helen held on to me tightly. Martha didn't want to let go, but she eventually dropped my clothes and stood aside, wiping her tears over and over. My adoptive dad, Tom, finally understood. Even though he was excited, his face turned red as he made sounds from the bed. When I was 12, he fell while working and hurt his nerves, which left him partly paralyzed and unable to speak clearly. I walked over to him right away. Helen tried to grab me, but I pulled away. Seeing me come closer, Tom got even more excited, waving his hand and making sounds like, "Go, go!" He was telling me to go with them. Everyone could see this new family was rich. So I held Tom's hand and said coldly to my real parents, "Give me $500,000 and I'll be your daughter." Richard and Helen looked shocked by my words. They were surprised. I turned around. "What? You can't afford it? If not, then just leave." From the moment they arrived, they never thanked Tom and Martha for raising me. They looked down on my home. They didn't politely ask about taking me. They just announced they took the wrong baby and now wanted the real one back, keeping the one they raised. It felt like they were sure I'd just go with them. Richard quickly shook his head. No, we can afford it, of course." Richard's family made millions each year. $500,000 was nothing to them, like buying a few expensive bags. But for Tom and Martha, it meant they could live without money worries for the rest of their lives. Tom got very emotional, waving his hands. Martha panicked. "Lena, what are you saying? We're not selling you." I held her hand, trying to calm her down. Claire held Richard's hand, frowned, and muttered, "So cheap, always thinking about money." I chuckled and glanced at her. "Your name is Claire, right? But if the hospital hadn't made a mistake, you'd be living in this house, not me. You took my name, and you took the life that should have been mine." Claire's face went white, and she nervously held Richard's arm. Richard patted her head, but frowned a little, looking slightly annoyed. I dropped the nice act. "You suddenly show up, say you want to take me, and won't give my parents their daughter back? Did you even think about how my parents feel? Asking for $500,000? Is that too much? Or is your daughter worth less than that? If so, then just go." I turned back and kept wiping Tom's hand. Tears filled his eyes. He kept making sounds. Like Martha, he thought this was a good chance for me. "But Dad, how do you know they'll treat me well?" "All right, we'll give it to you," Helen said softly, her eyes red. "Big brother and sister took care of Lena for so many years. It's the right thing to do. In my past life, they never thanked them. They just took me away, leaving Tom and Martha with nothing in their poor house. When Martha got the bank card, she cried uncontrollably, not wanting me to go. Lena, Lena! Since I was 12, I had never seen her cry like that. I wiped her tears. Mom, use the money to get dad treatment. I'll come back. She wanted to say more, but just nodded through her tears, let go of my hand, and I left with them. Mom, Dad, with this money, I hope you live longer this time. I've lived this life once before. After they took me last time, things were not good. They were busy with work and friends and Claire. They had almost no time or care left for me. Even when I was picked on and insulted, they thought it was my fault. They never raised me, so taking me back felt like they weren't taking real responsibility. They planned to marry me off to help their family's status, even knowing the man didn't love me. They let him treat me badly after we married. That marriage was like a prison. That was my whole experience with them. Who would have thought heaven would give me a second chance? Watching the view change as we drove away, I decided, I won't repeat my past life. I want to take care of Tom and Martha and live my own way. When we got to their big house, Helen surprisingly talked with me for a long time. The next day, she even took me shopping for clothes and jewelry. Because I had a strong country accent, she hired a tutor to help me speak standard Mandarin. This was care I never got in my last life. So, maybe you get what you pay for. I thought about it, then said clearly, Mom, my German isn't good. Can you get me a German tutor too? In my past life, people made fun of my accent, and I practiced secretly for ages. Now, I could speak standard Mandarin easily. Hearing me speak well, Helen's eyes lit up, and she agreed immediately. It seems maybe parents' love does have a price tag. Just then, Claire came downstairs after showering. Seeing Helen and me getting along, she suddenly felt worried. She hurried down, pushed me aside, and jumped into Helen's arms, saying, Mom, can you dry my hair? I stayed calm and moved back slightly. She clung to her mom, scared I would take the love she thought belonged only to her. Isn't that strange? Richard and Helen are my real parents. I saw scenes like this many times in my past life. I used to get so jealous I would fight with Claire on purpose. Richard and Helen would say I was being petty and small-minded. They looked annoyed, pushed me away, and scolded me. Claire has been our daughter for 15 years. We know you've had it hard, but you can't fight with her. All right, I stood up calmly. Mom, I'm going upstairs to study. Helen seemed to realize she was being unfair. She started to say something, but then held Claire tighter as Claire hugged her. Helen ended up spoiling her, tapping her nose playfully. You little thing. Claire and I are very different, but I'm glad it doesn't bother me anymore. Half an hour later, Claire appeared at my door. Her eyes showed fear. She watched me, unsure. I knew what she was planning. She used to be the only child, getting all of Richard and Helen's attention. My arrival made her nervous. I put my book down and walked towards her. Claire frowned and stepped back, but then bit her lip and leaned backward. My room was right next to the stairs. The fall she expected didn't happen because I caught her. Her face turned red and angry. Lena, why did you pull me back? Once she was standing safely, I let her go and said coldly, In 3 days, there's a violin competition in City A. Daniel will be a judge. Claire played violin since she was 3 and won many prizes. Her family often bragged about her skill, and Daniel was her favorite violinist. Claire hesitated. How do you know? I didn't answer, but continued. If you fell down those stairs, you'd break your wrist. You'd miss playing the violin, miss seeing Daniel. You'd feel pain every time you practiced for more than 2 hours. Is it worth losing your passion for violin just to win your parents' affection? In my past life, this is what happened to her after she successfully blamed me for her fall. My parents looked down on me even more, starting a long chain of sad events for me. Claire, who lost her violin talent, became easily angered. Her past awards became painful memories. She went from a star to an ordinary person, couldn't handle it, and took her anger out on me. I fought back, and neither of us ended up happy. I know she'd try the same trick in this life, but I'm tired. I don't want any more fighting with this family. To avoid future problems, I decided to save Claire this time. I hope she has some good in her. Her eyes blinked, turning red. She stayed silent. At 15, Claire wasn't as cruel as she became later. Losing the violin meant losing her last bit of real feeling. "Why did you save me?" she whispered. I blinked. "I hope you won't try to blame me for things again. I won't fight you for Richard and Helen's love. You saw my family's situation. My dad's very sick, and my mom can't earn much. I want to use the Miller family's resources to become strong, then go back to my parents. Let's just live peacefully and not hurt each other, okay?" Claire's eyes widened in shock. She couldn't believe what I said. Stuttering, she said, "You're lying." Then she ran to her room and slammed the door. But I wasn't lying. Their love doesn't matter to me. My real parents, Tom and Martha, are waiting for me in the countryside. At 1 a.m., violin music came from the next room. I opened my eyes silently. She believed me. 3 days later, the news about the violin competition came out. Seeing Daniel's name listed as a judge, Claire looked at me with mixed feelings. "Lena, if you ever try to take Mom and Dad from me, I'll never forgive you." I smiled, not worried. That day will never come. The Millers enrolled me in a fancy private school where most students came from rich families. They put me in the second year of high school, the same class as Claire, saying it was so we could look after each other. But I couldn't keep up at first. Education in the countryside was behind. I struggled a lot. Helen arranged lots of tutoring for me, and finally, before the school year started, I caught up. Claire's competition had just finished, and she won first place. Daniel praised her highly and said he wanted to mentor her. Richard and Helen took me to watch her competition. They were beaming with pride, talking happily with others, and enjoying the compliments about Claire. I looked down. On the outside, Claire seemed bright and successful, but inside, she seemed trapped. All the love she received seemed to have strings attached. On stage, Claire held her violin, her eyes red with emotion. Daniel kept his arm around her shoulders, clearly impressed. Suddenly, she looked towards me in the audience. I was surprised, then I smiled and clapped for her. Claire blinked and quickly looked away. On the way home, I got a text message. It was from Claire. "Lena, let's compete fairly for Mom and Dad's love from now on, okay? Let's both work hard for it." I was surprised. I looked over at her. She avoided looking at me, holding her trophy tightly. I couldn't understand what Claire was thinking, so I decided not to worry about it. As long as Claire didn't cause problems, her thoughts were her own business. My return caused some talk. The real daughter of the Miller family was found, and everyone wondered how Claire and I would get along. In my past life, I was made fun of for my accent and bad grades, always compared to Claire. This time, I had no accent, and my grades were just okay. I was pretty average. Within a week, nobody paid much attention to me anymore. But the troubles from my past life still found me. Facing a red-haired girl, I clenched my hands. "Hey, you're Claire's sister. Go tell Claire if she messes with my guy, Jill, again, she better watch out." The red-haired girl, Roxy, was known for being trouble. Her rich dad spoiled her, so she always got away with things. But Roxy liked a boy named Jill, who unfortunately liked Claire. Someone like Roxy couldn't outsmart Claire, so back then, she took her anger out on me instead. Claire disliked me, and my parents didn't care, so Roxy insulted me freely. Sometimes I felt Roxy was just crazy. I frowned and said, "If you like Jill, go after him. If you hate Claire, go pick on her. Why bother me?" Then I turned to leave. Roxy straightened up and pulled me back. "Who do you think you are talking to me like that? Heard you came from the countryside. I'm being easy on you here." I stared at her coldly. "Let go." Back then, Roxy bullied me. Now that I have a second chance, I don't want trouble, but I'm not afraid anymore. The next moment, Roxy slapped my face hard, glaring defiantly like a movie villain. "I won't let go. What are you going to do?" "Let her go," Claire's voice came from behind. I quickly hid the pepper spray I had up my sleeve. Why was she here? She ran over, looking annoyed. What a pain. But then she stood in front of me like she was protecting me. I looked at her profile, thinking. Seeing Claire, Roxy seemed less brave, not as cocky as before. She snorted and was about to leave when I stopped her. Wait. In the next second, I rushed forward, knocked Roxy down, sat on top of her, and raised my fist. Memories of being humiliated in the past flooded back. Anger tightened my fist as I punched down hard. Roxy screamed, covering her face, unable to fight back. Just because I didn't look for revenge doesn't mean I forgot the hate. This sudden attack surprised everyone. By the time they reacted, I had beaten Roxy badly. The anger left my chest and I stood up. Claire walked over, unhappy. Couldn't you just walk away? How are you going to explain this to Mom and Dad? Walk away? Last time I backed down so many times and Roxy's bullying only got worse. This time, I looked at Claire, picked up a stone from the ground, and smashed it against my own forehead. Ah! She screamed, staring at me in shock. What are you doing? Blood ran down my forehead. I fixed my eyes on her. I don't know why you helped me just now, but since you did, can you help me one more time? I wanted to end this problem for good. With the Miller family's power, we could crush Roxy completely and buy peace for my future. Claire nodded. Okay. She was smart and quickly understood what I wanted. She took out her phone and called Jill. I called the police. If we were going to do this, let's make it a big deal. Jill arrived soon, but I didn't expect Daniel to come with him. Daniel, my husband from my past life. My blood ran cold. Even in the sunshine, I felt chilled. The two of them walked over to Claire, concerned. After Claire signaled she was okay, Daniel looked at me. I quickly looked away, but he had already noticed me and walked closer. Hey, you've got blood on your forehead. Wipe it off. I stayed silent. Impatient, Daniel frowned and put a handkerchief in my hand. What? Can't you talk? When I didn't move, the spoiled rich boy stubbornly stood there, hands in his pockets, saying casually, What? You want me to do it for you? Then he pressed the handkerchief against my wound. The pain snapped me back to reality. I swallowed hard against my pounding heart and tightened my fist, thanking him. Thank you. He pulled back his hand with a proud grin. I really thought you couldn't speak. From the corner of my eye, I saw Richard. His glasses flashed, and I clearly saw the scheming look in his eyes. My heart sank. Sure enough, he didn't even check on Claire but walked straight to me, smiling politely and greeting Daniel. Daniel, you're here too. Sorry for the trouble Claire caused you. Thanks for saving her. After the police took Roxy and the others away, Richard and Helen got involved. Roxy was in big trouble. They patched me up quickly. After I gave my statement to the police, Richard and Helen wanted to take Jill and Daniel out to eat. Daniel waved them off and left with his arm around Jill. Watching them go, Richard smirked and said, Lena, looks like Daniel's really interested in you. I got a shiver down my spine. Living this life again, I couldn't ignore what he was suggesting. I nodded silently. But Daniel's interested in Claire. Helen caught on quickly and grabbed my hand warmly. He saved you, remember? You need to treat him to a meal. You're in the same class, so you really should thank him properly. I'll send you $10,000 to spend. You can get Daniel a gift. This was new. Helen had never offered me money before. Since I came back to the Millers, they paid for everything. But Helen either forgot or chose not to give me spending money directly. Seems she did remember her duty now. Helen gently touched my wound. Lena, maybe get some bangs? Cover that scar. A girl's face is important. Claire watched us closely. Once we were in the car, she whispered to me, Daniel likes me. Don't compete with me. Richard and Helen raised her to always think strategically. Claire saw nothing wrong with this, but I thought differently. I glanced at her. I won't. Daniel's family was much more important than the Millers. Getting close to them would mean a powerful connection for the Miller family. In my past life, Claire ended up with Jill. They already had a connection to Jill's family. The Millers just needed to be patient. But they still planned to marry me off to Daniel, not caring how I felt. The Millers just saw me as a useful object. This time, I wasn't going along with their plans. I ignored Richard and Helen's comments and focused on eating, sleeping, and studying. At first, Claire watched me carefully, but when she saw I wasn't really interested in Daniel, she relaxed. My grades kept getting better, and by the middle of the year exams, I was the top student in the whole school. My success gave Richard and Helen something new to talk about at parties. They'd praise Claire and then mention me too. Claire's anger showed in her red eyes. "So, you're just getting high scores to make them like you?" I looked at her, speaking calmly and clearly. "I'm studying hard for myself, not for their love." I felt sorry for Claire. If you grow up with loving parents, shouldn't you share love? My presence made Claire nervous, which told me Richard and Helen weren't truly loving toward her either. Business people care most about one thing: profit. Yet I wasn't expecting the trouble that followed. Richard suggested I tutor Daniel. I shook my head and refused firmly. No way! Daniel was a nightmare. In my past life, the Millers drugged both of us. I woke up to find us in the same bed. Feeling guilty, Daniel was pressured by my parents into marrying me. But that didn't make him love me. He was wild, and when he felt wronged, he fought back hard. We had no wedding, just signed papers. On our wedding day, Daniel choked me. "Thought you could trap me, Lena. I'll make you pay." After that, he'd party like crazy. Whenever he got drunk, he'd call me just to insult and control me. On good days, he'd just say mean things. On bad days, he'd make me crawl like a dog. I died in a car crash going to pick him up from a bar. The car caught fire, and I burned alive. That feeling of hopelessness? I'll never forget it. This time, I would stay far away from Daniel. Richard didn't expect me to refuse. His smile froze. His eyes were sharp like knives. "Lena, what did you say?" I stared right back at him. "I said no. I won't tutor Daniel." Suddenly, he stood up and slapped me hard. I fell to the floor, seeing stars. Richard stood over me, his voice ice cold. "Remember, everything you have comes from the Millers. You'll do as I say. Take her to the family prayer room to kneel. She can't get up until she agrees. We don't need a lazy person in this family." My fists clenched tight. Hatred burned in my chest. I knelt for 3 days without any food or water. How could I forget? Richard and Helen are cruel. One night, the door creaked open. I thought it might be Helen coming to persuade me, but it wasn't. It was Claire, sneaking in. She tossed me some milk and bread. "Eat quickly. I'll take the trash when you're done." After that, she crawled under a table, hid some bread there, then came back out. I didn't understand what she wanted. I just ate quietly. Then it hit me. I was still too weak. Fighting Richard directly wouldn't work. Claire frowned at me. Why not just give in a little? My voice was hoarse. If I give in now, what about next time? Do I have to keep giving in my whole life? That stopped Claire. She had never really stood up for herself, so she couldn't understand how I felt. After eating, I left the prayer room, went to Richard, and promised to tutor Daniel seriously, and even try to make him like me. Richard was pleased, patting my head with a smile. When Claire found out, she was furious and threw the hidden bread at me. "Wow! You actually tried to steal Daniel from me after I brought you food so you wouldn't starve?" I ignored her and went straight to my room. After kneeling for 3 days, I had missed classes and needed to catch up fast. The next day, Daniel and I were desk mates again. When he saw me, he frowned, annoyed. "I saved you, and this is how you thank me?" I pressed my lips together, shook my head, and tried to soothe him. "I'm helping you with your studies because you saved me. Don't worry, you can do whatever you like, and I'll cover for you." Daniel looked at me doubtfully, muttering, "At least you understand." This was my plan. Act like I was going along with Daniel. I just needed to keep Richard and Helen fooled for a few years. Once I was strong enough, had enough skills, I could break free. Life finally calmed down. All through my junior year, I did Daniel's homework, got water for him, kept watch while he napped, and covered for him when he skipped class. We started talking more. Occasionally, Daniel would ask me to hang out. I'd show the chat messages to Richard and Helen to keep them happy. Then, I'd refuse Daniel's invitations and go to the library all day, returning home late at night. Claire was always busy. Although she still disliked me, she didn't try to frame me again. She had violin competitions, parties to go to, all while juggling her studies and her relationship with Jill. She was trying her best to meet Richard and Helen's high hopes. On the first day of senior year, Daniel stared at me for a long time, resting his head on his hand. I put down my pen and looked at him, confused. "What's up?" He frowned annoyingly and reminded me, "You said you'd give me a gift on the first day back." It suddenly hit me. A few days before final exams last year, he had talked nonstop about whether I'd miss him over the summer and suggested we travel together. I turned down every request. He got angry, threw his cup, and stormed off. Somehow Richard heard about this and forced me to apologize. Daniel didn't reply to me for a long time. Richard was busy but left strict orders for me to calm Daniel down, and I agreed obediently. That night, Daniel sent me a location. Twilight Bar. I trembled, struggling to breathe. In my past life, I died on the way to a bar. After a while, Daniel messaged again. "Knew you wouldn't come. How about this? I'll forgive you if you buy me this." It was a talking stuffed animal that said, "I love you." I agreed to send it to his house, but he insisted I give it to him in person. "You didn't forget, did you?" Daniel shouted now, his eyes flashing. I coughed. "Of course not. I'll give it to you tomorrow." The next day, I handed him the gift. He smiled widely until he pressed it and froze, looking shocked. I grinned at him. "I changed the audio. What do you think? Isn't it encouraging you to study?" I had replaced "I love you" with "study hard." Daniel wasn't doing well in school. At this rate, he wouldn't get into any decent college. I thought I was helping him. Surprisingly, Daniel seemed a little upset. His eyes turned red before he left school quickly. After he left, I took out my exam papers and focused. Having been married to him in another life, I had some idea what Daniel was thinking, but I didn't want any more connection with him. I had to act dumb. If Richard found out Daniel liked me, he'd happily arrange for me to marry Daniel later. One of Daniel's friends came over to chat, curious. He asked, "Where's Daniel? Skipping again?" I shook my head. "I don't know." Then he tapped the table secretively. "Hey, why are you always doing Daniel's homework? You like him or something?" I shook my head again. "Nope. Just because he helped me before. I don't like guys with bad grades. We won't end up at the same college anyway." Footsteps paused behind the door, then quickly left. Daniel's friend looked up, scratching his head. "Tch, you smart students are picky." I kept working on my papers. Daniel was absent for the next couple of months. He reappeared for midterm exams. His scores had jumped by 200 points. I was surprised. After exams, Daniel came back to study, poking my arm with a pen. "Hey, what college are you trying for?" Without looking up, I replied, "Stanford." Daniel didn't reply, just quietly pulled out his test papers and studied. Later, Daniel really did ask me to tutor him. When he had questions, he came to me. As I explained things to him, I strengthened my own understanding too. Richard and Helen were pleased with how we seemed to be getting along. In the second half of senior year, Daniel ranked in the top 10. He was truly smart. I had nothing left to teach him. Daniel's family hired a tutor for both of us. Days flew by, and before I knew it, final exams were over. Leaving the exam room, I breathed a sigh of relief. Finally done. The day before the results were announced, I got a call from Stanford University admissions. In that moment, all my hard work felt worth it, and I cried tears of joy. To my surprise, Daniel got a call too. He excitedly phoned me. "Lena, which one are you going for, Harvard or Stanford? I could go with you." I didn't answer him. We had been tied together throughout high school for 2 years, and I didn't want it to continue. When the results were announced, my name was at the top of the list. I never imagined I'd be the top scorer. Richard and Jane got to enjoy basking in the glory. Claire, however, was full of unhappiness. So what if you're smart? You're just like a block of wood. After spending 2 years together, she knew I wouldn't compete for mom and dad's love anymore. At the graduation party, Helen brought Claire to find Jill, and Richard took me to see Daniel. Daniel was dressed up in a suit, his hair perfectly styled. Richard casually greeted Daniel's dad, saying, "Does Daniel know which school he's aiming for? Maybe Arlena can apply there too. They could be classmates and look out for each other." Daniel's dad gave a non-committal response, saying it was up to what Daniel wanted, but Daniel pulled me aside and asked, "You mentioned wanting to apply to Stanford. Are you still thinking about it?" I nodded. "Yeah." He grinned. "Then I'll apply with you." I didn't reply. If he wanted to apply, fine. Stanford's huge. Once I was busy with school, he wouldn't find me anyway. When the acceptances came out, both Daniel and I got into Stanford. Claire went to Berkeley to be with Jill. With her grades and violin skills, a music college would have been easy for her. I chose biotechnology as my major, just like in my past life. Soon after the semester started, I joined a competition. Every day, I was buried in the lab with my teachers and classmates, working on calculations. Daniel often asked me out. After turning him down so many times, he cornered me angrily. "Lena, you don't return my messages or take my calls, and I never know where you are. Can't you see how I feel about you?" I took off my gloves and asked quietly, "You like me?" Daniel was stunned, frowning at me. I sighed, ready to explain everything. "But I don't like you. I remember you used to like Claire. I'm not sure why you're interested in me now." Hearing I didn't like him, Daniel was clearly hurt, yelling, "Lena, how can you not like me? In high school, you did my homework, brought me water, cared about my studies." "Richard put me up to it," I interrupted. Daniel looked at me in disbelief. "Richard wanted me to win your heart," I explained. "He wanted to use me to get close to your family, Daniel, but I refused." Daniel's eyes widened and his face showed panic. He reached out and held me, looking pained. "Did you never like me?" I never imagined Daniel would be hurt because of me someday. In my past life, it felt like being trapped at home or getting calls from him just to be insulted. I'd never seen this sad, love-seeking side of Daniel before. "Never," I said coldly. Daniel let go of my hand and laughed bitterly at himself. His eyes fixed obsessively on me. "Lena, you're heartless." Knowing Daniel, he was probably going to hate me again. For some reason, I told him about the difficult times I faced with the Miller family. "That day you saved me, Richard saw us together and insisted I tutor you. But I didn't want to, so he slapped me and locked me up in the family prayer room for 3 days and nights without water. Coming from the countryside, he felt nothing for me, just saw me as a tool to arrange a marriage. Afterward, I pretended to obey. I was nice to you at school, but I always kept my distance. Though I used you, I felt I had no choice. I'm sorry, Daniel. If you really like me, please let me live the life I want." The conversation with Daniel ended badly. I didn't know when Richard would find out about this, so I threw myself into my experiments, working hard to improve myself. Finally, our team won first place in the competition. A professor noticed my efforts during the contest and took me into his research group. When I got the news, I broke down in tears. I'd studied so hard, and at this moment, I finally succeeded. I was finally close to leaving the Miller family behind. The professor once worked at the National Biological Institute. With his connections, I wasn't far from reaching the institute myself. In my past life, I also chose biotechnology as my major, but soon after starting, Richard dragged me back to marry Daniel. This time, my goal was clear: get into the National Biological Institute to become a top scientist and gain the nation's protection. That way, even the Miller family couldn't touch me. After becoming the professor's student, I changed my phone number and only stayed in touch with Mom and Dad, Tom and Martha. Since returning to the Miller family, I had never stopped contacting them. Knowing they were waiting for me kept me going. Diving headfirst into the lab for over 2 years, I worked without rest with my team on anti-cancer technology, running many tests. Finally, we developed a very effective anti-cancer drug. As soon as it was released, it caused excitement around the world. I turned down interviews with the media. When the professor asked what my wish was, I said without hesitation, "Sir, my mom and dad are still in the countryside. I want to bring them over." The professor gave me time off. He didn't really want me to go since the drug had just launched. As the project leader, I was getting a lot of attention, and he worried for my safety. So he asked for a few people from the Institute to protect me. 4 bodyguards were in the car with me. Watching the scenery fly by, I thought back to the past. Daniel's family had a distant cousin who worked in defense technology. She came home for holidays with 2 guards behind her, supposedly sent by the nation to protect her. Back then, I stood behind Daniel, full of envy. If I had had national protection, maybe I wouldn't have suffered so much. And maybe mom and dad wouldn't have died. In my past life, my dad Tom passed away shortly after I left home. Mom stayed alone. One day, missing me, she started walking towards the city but never made it out of the mountains. On the way, there was a car accident. It was the villagers who helped bury her body. Hearing about all this was heartbreaking, and I cried uncontrollably. I desperately wanted to find my mom back then, but Richard told me he had handled everything and that I should focus on winning Daniel's favor. I was furious. Furious at Richard's control. Furious at my own powerlessness. As I stood at the doorstep of my house again, I felt nervous about coming home. Could this newly fixed-up house be mine? My busy mom saw me and slowed down on her way to the living room, looking back 3 times. Once she was sure it was a me, the bowl in her hands crashed to the ground. "Lena!" It was a cry filled with years of missing me. Tears welled up in my eyes. "Mom, I'm back!" My mom held me tight, crying without stopping. Between sobs, she said, "I thought you'd never return. I thought I'd never see you again in this lifetime." After settling my parents, I visited the Miller house. Since joining the research group, I hadn't contacted them, but some things needed to be finished. Seeing me back, Richard raised his hand just like before. This time, his hand didn't hit my face. The bodyguards behind me grabbed him. 4 of them stood around him threateningly. Richard didn't dare push it. He shook off their grip and pointed at me, cursing. "Ungrateful girl!" I smirked mockingly. "If that's how you see it, then fine, I'm ungrateful." I told him I was there to cut all ties. With that, I handed over $500,000 and a paper declaring we were no longer family. Richard's eyes widened with anger. He grabbed the papers, tore them into pieces, and threw them on the floor. I watched him lose control without feeling anything. Nowadays, I was famous, and he couldn't stand to let me go. The Millers had been using my success since my team developed the new drug, using my name for marketing. But I never expected Richard to be so shameless. Filled with anger, he snarled, "Now that you've made a name for yourself, once you marry Daniel, their family will respect us. Stop messing with that science stuff and come home to marry Daniel. It'll help the Millers." I laughed. Richard was as arrogant as ever. How could he expect a top national scientist to give up her passion just to be some pretty wife for his benefit? The bodyguards tensed up, ready to protect me, forming a circle around me. "Richard, I don't want anything to do with you or Daniel's family. I'm here today to officially cut ties with you so I can leave here cleanly. Since you're not willing, we have nothing more to say." With that, I turned to leave. Richard threw a cup at my back, screaming, "Ungrateful girl! I should have never taken you back from the countryside." As I reached the door, I met Claire. She was now engaged to Jill. After they finished college, they planned to marry. But from what I remembered, the Miller family wouldn't last another year. Remembering how Claire helped me in high school, I shared some advice. "Richard's raising you to marry into higher society, but real strength is being strong on your own." With that, I left. Claire stared wide-eyed at me. Who knows if she understood? As I walked out, I saw Daniel standing under the shade of a tree. He looked at me from a distance. I nodded slightly his way and got into the car. My professor called, telling me strongly to return soon. As the car started, everything from the past seemed to vanish in the wind. I leaned back in my seat, closing my eyes. I've spent a month trying to make sense of my past life since I was reborn. At first, I was filled with hate and anger. It wasn't until I faced the three rich, elegant people and our poor, messy selves that I realized what I truly wanted. Suddenly, the hatred disappeared. Perhaps my past life was meant to be unhappy, or maybe my view was just too narrow. After being reborn, letting go of old anger and leaving that toxic circle, I saw a world full of possibilities outside. As for Richard and Helen, they gave me life once, and I died once. Reborn, I've used their resources without feeling guilty. After all, they're still marketing the Miller daughter as a biotech star. Claire never harmed me in this life, so there's no need for me to harm her either. My marriage to Daniel was a trap set by Richard in the past. Neither of us wanted it, and he took his anger out on me. Reborn, I've used him to fool Richard and Helen. After I rejected his proposal, Daniel surprisingly kept this secret from me and played along for a while with Richard and Helen. Consider our debts settled. Returning home, my parents waited by the dinner table. Seeing me, Mom's eyes lit up and she smiled warmly. "Lena, I made your favorite cooked pork." 7 years flew by. I became a leader in my field, leading a team to develop various helpful medicines. Once, a major sickness with long-lasting coughing and fever spread across the nation, and our team worked nonstop to create a cure. Later, as the virus changed, we continued to adapt and improve the treatment. "Professor Lena, someone's here to see you," a student called out. I assumed it was Mom bringing food again, but was surprised to see Claire instead. Dressed in a business suit, she greeted me with a confident smile. "Professor Lena, can we talk in the cafe?" She got straight to the point. Claire had started a medicine company and wanted the first batch of our newly developed drug. I raised an eyebrow and decided to involve her in the business deal. The office was short on cash lately, so why not use an opportunity? After we finished talking business, Claire started chatting about other things. That's when I found out the Miller family went bankrupt. No surprise there. Daniel went after them and helped speed up their ruin. That part I didn't expect. Apparently, the Miller family going broke changed Richard's attitude towards Claire completely. Richard ended up begging at Jill's doorstep, but Jill wouldn't open the door no matter what. Their engagement was called off. Helen couldn't handle the shock and jumped off a building. Richard got attacked on the street by workers who hadn't been paid. He broke his leg, hit his head badly, and now he's stuck in bed for life. Claire, on the other hand, used her fame from violin playing to get jobs and make some money. After she saved enough, she started a medicine company and actually made it successful. Impressive. I sipped my coffee, feeling thoughtful. Wow, things really did change. Checking the time, I stood up. All right, I should head home for dinner. I barely took a couple of steps when Claire suddenly called out, "Lena, thank you." I just waved it off. Why thank me? Wasn't it her own hard work that paid off?